Every single day, you wake up in a different reality than the one you fell asleep in. I'm not speaking metaphorically. I'm not being poetic. I mean this literally. You are constantly shifting between parallel timelines, sliding through different versions of reality, and most of the time, you have absolutely no idea it's happening. The continuity you experience, the sense that your life is one linear progression from past to future, that's an illusion. A story your brain tells to make sense of something far more fluid, far more malleable, far more quantum than you've been led to believe. Right now, in this moment, infinite versions of you exist. There's a version of you reading this who will dismiss it as nonsense and click away. There's a version of you who will feel a deep recognition, a remembering of something you've always known but couldn't articulate. There's a version of you who's already living the dream life you think is years away. And there's a version of you still trapped in the patterns you thought you'd escaped years ago. All of these versions are real. All of them exist simultaneously in the quantum field. And the version you're experiencing right now, that's the timeline you've collapsed into through the accumulation of every thought, every emotion, every choice, every moment of attention you've given. But here's where it gets wild. You're not stuck in this timeline. You never were. You've been jumping between timelines your entire life. Sometimes in massive leaps, sometimes in subtle shifts so small you barely register them. That moment when you had a gut feeling to take a different route home and later discovered there was a major accident on your usual path. Timeline jump. That time you thought about an old friend and they called you 5 minutes later. Timeline jump. That experience where you could have sworn something happened one way but everyone else remembers it differently. Timeline jump. The Mandela effect isn't a glitch in the matrix. It's evidence that we're constantly navigating between parallel realities where details are slightly or sometimes significantly different. Your memories, the ones you're absolutely certain about, they're not recordings of what happened. They're reconstructions based on the timeline you're currently occupying. And when you shift timelines, sometimes your memories shift with you. Sometimes they don't. That's when you get that eerie feeling of, wait, wasn't it different before? Most people experience these shifts unconsciously. They're bouncing between timelines based on unconscious patterns, unexamined beliefs, and default emotional states. They're on autopilot, and their autopilot is programmed by their past, their conditioning, their trauma, their fears. So they keep jumping into timelines that mirror their internal chaos. Timelines where struggle is familiar, where disappointment is expected, where their worst beliefs about themselves and the world get confirmed over and over again. Not because these are the only timelines available, but because these are the timelines they're vibrationally aligned with. And this is the part that should wake you up. If you're jumping timelines unconsciously based on your unexamined patterns, that means you're also capable of jumping timelines consciously based on intentional alignment. You can choose which reality you collapse into. You can select which version of your life becomes your lived experience. You can navigate the quantum field with precision instead of stumbling through it blind. But first, you need to understand how timeline jumping actually works, not the New Age fantasy version, not the oversimplified manifestation teachings, the real mechanics underneath. Let's start with something fundamental. Every decision you make creates a branch point, a fork in the road where reality splits into multiple possibilities. In one timeline, you said yes. In another, you said no. In one timeline, you took the risk. In another, you played it safe. In one timeline, you trusted yourself. In another, you doubted. And here's the key insight. All of these timelines continue existing. They don't disappear just because you chose one path. They exist as parallel probabilities in the quantum field, and under the right conditions, you can shift from one to another. Scientists call this the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. It suggests that every quantum event, every moment of measurement, every choice causes the universe to branch into multiple versions. And while physicists debate whether these parallel universes are physically separate or exist as mathematical abstractions, the practical implication for your life is profound. You are not locked into one predetermined path. You are navigating an infinite garden of forking paths. And the path you're on right now is determined by your resonance, by your frequency, by the quantum signature you're broadcasting moment to moment. Now, most people think changing their life requires changing their circumstances first. Getting the new job, meeting the right person, making the money, moving to the new city. And then, once the circumstances are different, they'll feel different. They'll be different. They'll finally be living the life they want. But this is backwards. This is trying to change reality from the outside in. And it's why most people struggle for years without seeing the shifts they desire. Because they're trying to manipulate their current timeline instead of jumping to a different one. Timeline jumping works from the inside out. You don't change the timeline you're on. You shift to a timeline where what you desire already exists. And you do that by becoming the version of you who already lives in that timeline. By matching the frequency, the emotional state, the belief system, the identity of that version. By embodying it so completely that the quantum field has no choice but to collapse that reality into your experience. This is what people are doing when they have sudden breakthroughs, dramatic life changes, quantum leaps. They're not slowly evolving within one timeline. They're jumping to a completely different one. Think about the last time something in your life changed dramatically and quickly. Maybe you finally left a toxic relationship and suddenly your whole world opened up. Maybe you made a bold career move and doors you didn't even know existed started appearing. Maybe you healed from something you'd been struggling with for years and it felt like you became a different person overnight. What happened wasn't gradual improvement. What happened was a timeline jump. You shifted to a version of reality where that problem no longer defined you, where that limitation no longer existed, where you were already the person on the other side of the transformation. But here's where most people get stuck. They jump to a better timeline, they experience the breakthrough, and then they don't maintain the frequency. They don't embody the new identity consistently, so they slip back. They jump back to the old timeline or something close to it. Because their unconscious programming, their habitual patterns, their familiar emotional states, those are all still tuned to the old reality. And without conscious awareness, without intentional practice, those old frequencies pull them back like a gravitational force. This is why people lose the weight and then gain it back. Why they manifest the relationship and then sabotage it. Why they make the money and then lose it. Why they have the breakthrough and then regress. They're timeline jumping unconsciously. They briefly access a higher timeline, but they don't stabilize there. They don't anchor themselves in the new reality. They don't update their identity, their beliefs, their self-concept to match the new timeline. So the old timeline, the one they've lived in for years, the one that's deeply familiar, pulls them back. And this brings us to something critical. Timeline stability. Some timelines are more stable than others. The timeline you've been living in for years, the one built on your deepest beliefs about yourself and the world, that's a stable timeline. It has momentum. It has grooves worn deep by repetition. It's easy to stay in that timeline because it's familiar. Your nervous system knows how to operate there. Your identity is built around it. Your relationships reinforce it. Your environment reflects it. Even if it's painful, even if it's limiting, there's a perverse comfort in its familiarity. A new timeline, even a better one, is initially unstable. It's unfamiliar. It requires you to be someone you haven't been before, to make choices you haven't made, to feel emotions that are outside your comfort zone, to navigate situations without the old scripts. This instability is why so many people unconsciously resist the very changes they consciously desire. Because change, even positive change, requires leaving the known for the unknown. And your nervous system, programmed for survival, interprets the unknown as dangerous. So how do you stabilize in a new timeline? How do you make the jump and stay there? This is where the work becomes real, where manifestation stops being a fantasy and becomes a practice, where you stop just thinking about change and start embodying it. And I want to be clear, this isn't easy. This isn't something you do once and you're done. This is a moment-by-moment choice to align with the timeline you want to live in, even when every part of your old conditioning is screaming at you to go back to what's familiar. First, You need to identify the timeline you're currently on. Not where you wish you were, not where you think you should be, where you actually are. Look at your life with brutal honesty. What patterns keep repeating? What beliefs are running underneath your choices? What emotional states do you default to when you're not consciously managing yourself? What stories are you telling about who you are and what's possible for you? This is your current timeline. This is the reality you've been collapsing through your consistent vibration. Now identify the timeline you want to jump to. But here's the key. Don't think about it in terms of external circumstances. Think about it in terms of identity. Who is the version of you living in that timeline? How do they think? How do they feel? How do they carry themselves? How do they make decisions? What do they believe about themselves and the world? What emotional states are natural to them? What's their relationship with time, with money, with love, with their own worth? Get specific. The more detailed you can be about this version of you, the easier it becomes to embody them. Because you're not trying to fake it or pretend. You're recognizing that this version already exists in a parallel timeline. And you're choosing to align with them, to become them, to collapse the reality where they're you and you're them. This isn't fantasy. This is quantum mechanics applied to human consciousness. Now comes the practice. And I'm going to pause here because this is where everything shifts. If you're still reading, if you've made it this far, you're ready for something deeper. You're ready to become a conscious timeline navigator instead of an unconscious timeline jumper. And I want to invite you into something. Drop a comment below with the word jump if you're ready to take control of your timeline shifting. If you're done being at the mercy of unconscious patterns and ready to consciously choose your reality. Because when you declare that intention publicly, you're not just commenting on a video. You're making a quantum choice. You're announcing to the field which timeline you're aligning with. And I want to witness that choice. I want to see who's ready to jump. So comment jump right now, and let's continue this journey together. Here's the practice. Every morning, before you pick up your phone, before you engage with the external world, before you let the momentum of your old timeline grab you, you take 5 minutes to align with the timeline you're choosing. You close your eyes, you drop into your body, and you ask yourself a simple but profound question. What does the version of me in my desired timeline feel like right now? Not what are they doing, not what do they have, how do they feel? And then you cultivate that feeling. Maybe it's peace, maybe it's excitement, maybe it's confidence, maybe it's gratitude, maybe it's a sense of knowing that everything is working out. Whatever it is, you breathe it in. You let it fill your body. You let it become your baseline. And from that feeling, from that state, you move into your day. Every choice you make from that version of you. Every thought you think, you filter through their perspective. Every interaction you have, you show up as them. At first, this will feel awkward, unfamiliar, maybe even fake. That's your old timeline trying to pull you back. That's your nervous system saying, this isn't who we are. This isn't safe. This isn't known. But you don't fight it. You don't force it. You just gently, consistently, repeatedly choose the new frequency. You notice when you've slipped back into the old timeline, and without judgment, without shame, you recalibrate. You come back to the feeling, back to the identity, back to the version of you that's already living the life you desire. And here's what starts to happen. Small things begin to change. People respond to you differently. Opportunities you wouldn't have noticed before become visible. Ideas come to you that never would have arrived in your old state. Synchronicities multiply, doors open, paths appear. And it's not because you're working harder or doing more. It's because you've shifted to a timeline where these things are natural, where they're already part of the fabric of your reality, where they're not achievements you have to struggle for, but expressions of who you are. But let me warn you about something. The old timeline will test you. It will present you with evidence that nothing has changed. It will bring up old fears, old doubts, old patterns. It will create situations that trigger you back into your old responses. And this is where most people give up. They take these tests as proof that timeline jumping doesn't work, that they're still stuck, that nothing can really change. But these tests aren't proof of failure. They're proof that you're in the transition. They're the old timeline's last attempt to pull you back. And how you respond to these tests determines whether you stabilize in the new timeline or collapse back into the old one. When the test comes, and it will come, you don't deny it. You don't pretend it's not happening. You acknowledge it. This is my old timeline trying to reassert itself. This is the familiar pattern trying to pull me back. And then you make a conscious choice. But I'm not that version of me anymore. I'm choosing a different response. I'm choosing to stay aligned with the timeline I'm jumping to. And you act from that place, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's unfamiliar, even if every cell in your body is screaming to react the old way. This is the real work, not the visualization, not the affirmations, not the vision boards. This moment-by-moment choice to stay aligned with the new timeline when everything in your current experience is inviting you back to the old one. This is what separates people who transform their lives from people who stay stuck in the same patterns for decades. The willingness to stay in the discomfort of the unfamiliar long enough for it to become familiar. The commitment to embody the new identity even when there's no external evidence yet that it's working. And here's something fascinating about timelines. They have what I call resonant signatures. Think of it like a radio frequency. Every timeline broadcasts at a specific frequency, and you can only access the timelines you're tuned to. When you're vibrating at the frequency of lack, you can only perceive and experience timelines where lack is prominent. When you're vibrating at the frequency of fear, you only access timelines where things to fear are present. When you're vibrating at the frequency of unworthiness, you only collapse realities where that unworthiness gets confirmed. But shift your frequency, and suddenly different timelines become accessible. Timelines you literally couldn't perceive before become visible. Not because they weren't there, but because you weren't tuned to them. This is why two people can live in the same physical location, work in the same industry, have similar resources, and yet experience completely different realities. They're not in the same timeline. They're in parallel timelines, occupying the same space but experiencing different versions of it based on their resonant signature. And your resonant signature isn't just about positive thinking. It's not about forcing yourself to feel good all the time. It's about the authentic frequency of your being, the sum total of your beliefs, your emotions, your thoughts, your identity, your nervous system state, your subconscious programming. All of it creates a complex signature that the quantum field reads and responds to. And the field doesn't judge. It doesn't try to give you what you deserve or withhold what you don't. It simply mirrors your signature back to you with perfect precision. This is why affirmations often don't work. You're saying, "I am abundant," while your body is clenched in scarcity. You're declaring, "I am confident," while your nervous system is bracing for rejection. You're affirming, "I am successful," while your subconscious is running programs of unworthiness. The words don't match the signature, and the field reads the signature, not the words. So you stay tuned to the timeline that matches your actual frequency, not your desired one. Changing your resonant signature requires going deeper than thoughts. It requires addressing the emotional patterns, the nervous system conditioning, the subconscious beliefs, the somatic holding patterns, the identity structures. This is body-level work, soul-level work, not just mind-level work. And this is why transformation often feels so challenging, because you're not just trying to think differently, you're trying to be different at every level of your being. But here's the beautiful part. Every time you successfully maintain alignment with your desired timeline, even for a few minutes, even in the face of triggering circumstances, you're weakening the gravitational pull of the old timeline and strengthening the stability of the new one. You're training your system to operate at a new frequency. You're rewiring your neural pathways. You're updating your subconscious programming. You're proving to yourself that a different way of being is possible. And slowly, gradually, sometimes suddenly, The new timeline becomes more stable than the old one. The new frequency becomes more natural than the old one. And what once required enormous effort becomes effortless. Because it's not effort anymore. It's just who you are. Now, I want to address something that might be bothering you. If we're constantly jumping timelines, if reality is this fluid, doesn't that make everything meaningless? If nothing is fixed, if everything is changeable, what's the point? And I get it. This can feel destabilizing. The idea that the reality you've built your life on isn't solid, isn't permanent, isn't the only option. It can trigger existential anxiety. But I invite you to consider a different perspective. The fluidity of timelines isn't a bug. It's a feature. It means you're never trapped. You're never stuck. You're never condemned to one path. You're never limited by your past, your mistakes, your circumstances, your history. At any moment, you can choose differently. You can align differently. You can be differently. And in that choice, you access a different timeline. This fluidity is freedom. The greatest freedom imaginable. The freedom to continuously recreate yourself and your reality in alignment with your deepest truth. And meaning? Meaning doesn't come from reality being fixed. Meaning comes from your conscious participation in shaping it. From your awareness that you are not a victim of circumstances, but a creator of them. From the recognition that your life is not happening to you, it's happening through you. This awareness, this responsibility, this creative power, that's where meaning lives. In your conscious choice, moment by moment, to align with the timeline that reflects your highest vision for yourself and the world. So let me ask you directly, which timeline are you tuning into right now? The one where you're powerless, where change is hard, where you're stuck with the hand you've been dealt? Or the one where you're a conscious creator, where transformation is natural, where you have the ability to navigate between realities with intention? Both timelines exist. Both are available. Both are real. The question isn't which one is true. The question is, which one are you choosing to collapse into your experience? Because here's the final truth. You are jumping timelines whether you realize it or not. Every moment, every choice, every shift in your internal state, you're selecting which version of reality becomes your lived experience. The only question is whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously. Whether you're navigating with intention or drifting with momentum. Whether you're choosing your destination or being carried by currents you don't even know exist. Most people will read this and think it's an interesting idea, a cool concept, maybe even true on some level, and then they'll close this video and jump right back to their familiar timeline, the one they've been living in for years, the one that's comfortable in its discomfort, the one that confirms all their existing beliefs about themselves and the world. And that's fine. That's a choice too. An unconscious one, but a choice nonetheless. But some of you, a smaller number, you're going to feel something different, a recognition, a resonance, a sense that this isn't just information, it's activation, that reading these words is itself a timeline jump, that you're no longer the same person who started reading this, that something has shifted, something has opened, something is now possible that wasn't before, not because the information is magical, but because you're ready. Because this moment, right here, is your choice point, your fork in the road, your opportunity to consciously select which timeline you're going to stabilize in. And I want to say something directly to those of you who feel that activation. What you're experiencing isn't coincidence. You didn't find this by accident. In a very real sense, a version of you from a higher timeline reached back and guided you here, because that version knows what you need to hear right now, knows what you need to remember, knows that you're ready to step into your power as a conscious timeline navigator. And they're waiting for you to make the choice, to do the work, to maintain the alignment, to stabilize in the timeline where you and they are one. This is your moment. Not tomorrow, not when you finally figure it all out, not when circumstances are perfect. Right now, in this moment, you can choose, you can shift, you can jump, You can align with the version of you that's already living the life you've been dreaming about, already being the person you've been trying to become, already experiencing the reality you've been chasing. That version exists. That timeline exists. And the bridge between where you are and where they are isn't built with action. It's built with alignment. So here's what I want you to do. After you finish this, sit with yourself for a few minutes. Close your eyes, take some deep breaths, and feel into the version of you in your desired timeline. Don't think about them. Feel them. Let their frequency fill your body. Let their certainty become yours. Let their peace, their joy, their confidence, their knowing, let it settle into your cells. And then make one choice today from that place. One decision, one action, one response, just one. From the new timeline instead of the old one. And if you're feeling called, if something in you has shifted, if you're ready to join others who are consciously navigating timelines instead of unconsciously bouncing between them, leave a comment. Share what timeline you're choosing to stabilize in. Not the circumstances you want to change, the version of you that you're choosing to become. Because when you declare it, when you speak it into existence, you're not just sharing on social media. You're making a quantum commitment. You're announcing to the field, this is who I am now. This is the timeline I'm choosing. This is the reality I'm collapsing. And the field, always listening, always responsive, begins rearranging itself to match that declaration. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your openness. Thank you for your willingness to see reality in a new way. You are more powerful than you know, more creative than you've been taught, more free than you've allowed yourself to believe. And the timelines available to you are infinite, so jump wisely, jump consciously, jump with intention, and watch as the reality you've been seeking reveals itself to have been waiting for you all along.